And we are live.
What's up, everybody? Podcast 6.
Number 7 or 6.
7. Podcast number
I
7
don't
of
know.
Quarantiners.
Yeah.
Podcast 400 with Darko and Vin. Glad to have everybody back. Glad to have everybody back, and hope you're doing well. We're still in the midst of coronavirus. People are still suffering, and the world to date is at 177,000 alleged deaths right now. And I say alleged because there's a whole bunch of conspiracies going on around that, but God rest in peace, and God bless all the families out there suffering from the ones who have suffered. But Darko, what's up, man? What's going on in your world?
Nothing up. Gosh, nothing up. Nothing much. Yeah. It's been a rough day at work. Let me drink some water.
There you go.
So let me tell you. Actually, Ben and I had a very long conversation right before this, and I was kind of going on and on through that conversation for the most part, because we are still early, in this whole podcast process, and we are trying to build something that's going to last for a long time. That's going to be, something fun for both of us and also for everyone else. And that's, those are things that we are that I'm focusing the most. And I know that Ben has similar goals. We're not trying to make a ton of money right now. We're not trying to become billionaires by having a podcast. We understand that there's a sea of podcasts out there, but we are. And Ben brought up a good point where there is a lot of times where there's a lot of thoughts and a lot of ideas that we have that we never really turned into words and discuss them either through text or email, either like physically, or I guess physically also through by talking. And just like me right now, trying to, figure out what I'm going to say. But basically where I'm going with this is like talking things out, especially with people you can trust. And in this case, talking things out with everyone in ideas and being, authentic. I think it's very important. If we, I feel like the more we do this, the better we are going to be, communicating these ideas and forming new ideas and opinions. And both Ben and I are very open to new ideas and open to learning, really. So, and I know that I feel like that if you're going to be successful in this whole podcast process, and by successful, have this podcast for a very long time and have a good time, doing this. I think that's going to be important. But then, what about you?
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. I think communication is not easy, and I think internal communication is one thing, and getting those thoughts out are completely different. And and so I think that might be the heartbeat of or the message of today's podcast is communication and the importance of it, because I think a lot of people have a lot of ideas, and they think to themselves, they think about those ideas in their head, but whether that's politics or religion or relationships, there's a lot of things where you're having to kind of think to yourself in life about what might be the best route forward, and you have nobody to really talk things through and help you polish those ideas. And the ability to use the podcast that Darko and I are on to kind of help not only for us to get to know people and to dive into the minds of some of our closest friends, and hopefully one day some of the people who are famous or infamous as well, and people who have notoriety that we want to know more about and what brought them to success. By doing that, I think it's going to allow us all to grow in a way that helps us improve in communicating, and help us to work out our own thought life. And one of the ideas that Dark and I talked about earlier was kind of ownership over thought, right? I think a lot of people are worried that sometimes if they think something, and here's a good example, right? And I'll be honest with you. Have you ever, and maybe this is just me, but I have a feeling it's not. Have you ever been in a grocery store and you see an old man with a cane and he's going down the cereal aisle and he's walking too slow, and you just think in your head randomly, I should just kick his cane out from underneath him and then grab the cereal, keep going. It's like, whoa, did I just think that? Like, why am I thinking that? And you kind of laugh. It's not your thought. You're not going to do it. It's just this thing that kind of comes out of nowhere, which is another interesting subject to talk about. It's like, where do thoughts come from? Joe Rogan talks about thoughts as being like these little creatures, these spirits or spirits or demons, whatever you want to call them, because he'll say he'll be writing and all of a sudden he'll have this idea and it wasn't his. It was just kind of given to him. And so that's an interesting concept, and I think some people, when they're given these thoughts, the thoughts can be so heavy or so contrary to their personality that I think it can mentally upset those people, or possibly provide too much anxiety because they're like, why am I thinking this? I didn't want to think that. But I think the moral of that story is that you don't own your thoughts. Your thoughts are things that come into your head and they are spurred on by other things that you've seen, heard, experienced in life. And so, allowing those thoughts to kind of take ownership over you can be tempting, like, oh yeah, that's my idea. But at the same time, likely it's not. And so not only will it help your ego as well, because you're not taking ownership over some of the ideas that you have, but it's also, there's a lot of specific examples I want to bring up. But are you hearing what I'm saying, Darko? Is that something that you've had?
No, that's very good. No, keep on going.
Yeah. So I guess I'll give you an example. I had a buddy of mine in Monroe, North Carolina. And, and I won't say who he was, but he was a really good friend of mine and married, beautiful kids, and a home, yard, animals. He had chickens and stuff. Well, one day he was in the house, nicest guy in the world, man. This just the biggest sweetheart of a, awesome human being. And one day he's sitting there with the stress of affording a family, paying the bills, providing. He's the only one working, and it's all this pressure on him. And then one day he had this thought, and it just came out of nowhere. And the thought was, you should kill your kids and your wife. And that thought was so contrary to how he perceived himself that when he had that thought, it jarred him. He was like, ugh. And he panicked. He was like, why did I think that? And then what happened from there is that thought took root in his mind and in his spirit, and it started to grow, and it started to torment him to the point to where he had to commit himself to an asylum because he was afraid he might act on those thoughts. And he allowed those thoughts to take ownership over him rather than just laughing at the fact that life is heavy. Like life is not easy. It's pressure, it's stress, like I have stupid thoughts all the time. I'll be walking behind an old lady up the stairs or down the stairs, and I'll be like, man, it'd be funny if I just kicked her down the stairs. It wouldn't be funny. That would be the worst thing in the world. But it's just those thoughts that are just so contrary to what you're thinking. It's hilarious because you'd never do it. But if that thought is so contrary to you and so against your personal beliefs, I think it can really rock you, which it did my friend. And he had to go to an asylum for a while because he was scared that he would act on these thoughts, and he had to take psychotic medicine or whatever it's called. And he did it for a while, and he's way better now. I mean, the last I know, I haven't talked to him for, I don't know, I guess I probably should use the word friend because I'm not really that good of a friend, but 4 years is the last time I talked to him probably. But me and him, you know, he told me about that, and I was just like, man. And I guess I had a heart to heart with him. I was like, dude, you're not your thoughts. I can think I'm Superman. I can think I'm Superman all I want. It doesn't mean I'm going to block bullets and fly. So that right there should tell you right away, you're not your thoughts. You can think whatever you want, but you're separate from your thoughts. And those thoughts can be as innocuous as how do people perceive me? You know, what is my perception of other people's perception of me? And I think that one thought keeps people from doing a lot of things in their life.
Yeah, I think that there is a good point, and I think that's definitely. And you can say if you don't agree with me. I think that's an extreme example, because you know that's an extreme action too. You know, and it's like you said, like it was going towards the fruition, and you know that guy took the right steps. You know, before it became fatal, possibly. But one thing that I'm thinking is that you know I feel like you have to have the control over your mind.
100%.
And you know, it's not. It doesn't mean that you have split personality. Mind is mind can and you can maybe look at it as subconscious or whatever. Like I've read so many books on habits, and it's crazy how habits can control us. And how hard it is to change habits, and how hard it is to. But it's also crazy how beneficial habits can be. How they can change your life. And I've been able to build some habits to a degree throughout my life that helped me immensely. And I've been doing it through reading these books, and it's crazy like how it all adds up. But what I'm going with this is, so I read this book called Atomic Habits, and also I connected it to this other book that's called, I think, Mind Hacking. And in Mind Hacking, the guy was talking essentially how you are not your mind, you're not your brain. Like things that you think, like for example, I'm going to eat, it's a great book. I love it, James Clear. So this book is more of a guide, like how you can form good habits. While the other book, Mind Hacking, was
Mind Hacking. That's right.
Yes. It's really good. It was a more like it explained really how it is. So this guy was actually a programmer. I'm not sure if he's a hacker, but he connected it there. Like he had a big problem with his drinking, which is a bad habit, and he was able to take himself out of that rut by essentially connecting the programming to to the actual, like, thinking in a way like I'm just going to, every time I want to I want to drink alcohol, I'm just gonna shut myself off, like by like his first step was like his wife literally left him. His first step, I'm going to take all the alcohol in the house and I'm going to pour it down the drain. And he was taking bottles of alcohol, and as alcohol was getting more and more expensive, because some of the bottles were very expensive, he had a lot of alcohol. He was thinking, like his brain was like, oh, maybe I should save this one because it's a $300 whatever whiskey or whatever.
Yeah.
And he was just shutting that thought off, like nope, this is going down, nope. He would like say something to shut that thought off, because there's a lot of times where your brain just working against you, and you just need to push through those moments. Like for example,
let's touch on that real quick too. I was going to remember what you were going to say, but you said two things that I want to talk on. You said your brain was working against you, and then you said that he would say things that would stop him from thinking certain things. Now, personally, I'll give you the example of what I do. Like if I have an idea, and my best friend in Kansas City told me about this, Chris Blazik, he said, But anytime I have a bad idea, I use that method. And the method is whatever idea that comes up that I'm like, I don't want to think about that. I pretend I have a samurai sword and I cut the idea in half and I just blow it away. And that's kind of what I do. Do you have any techniques like that? Do you say something, or are you so strong that you have no bad ideas?
No, dude, listen, I had a bad idea earlier where I ate, way more food than I should. I ate so much capellini that it's insane, and I try to, and it's not like I'm not trying to like watch my weight necessarily, even though we still have that 30-day challenge. But I'm not trying to watch my weight, necessarily. But I don't want to overeat myself to the point where I hate myself,
Yeah.
And like that happens to me a lot. Like I don't chew my food or anything like that. It's stuff that and another book that I read that was super helpful with this stuff was a 5-second rule, and
that when food falls on the ground and then you pick it up real
it's
quick?
it's definitely, I mean, it has nothing to do with it, but so this, I'm not sure what the name of the author is, but this woman, she was in a terrible place. She was literally she was an alcoholic. She had kids and stuff. She couldn't wake up on time to get her kids to school. She was just a mess. She was a lawyer. She couldn't find a job. There were all these things that were bad, about her life. And essentially what happened is one night while she was drinking herself to sleep, because that was another bad habit she had, she decided, she watched a rocket launch. And it was going like 10, 9, 8, and it went 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then she thought to herself in the morning, okay, I'm not going to, hit snooze button. Within 5 seconds, I'm going to get up. And when it hits, like when I get the first alarm at 6 a.m., I'm going to get up, and I'm going to do the same thing that they just did. I'm going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it works every time. And there's a lot of science behind it. I'm not sure how much I should share of this book. Spoiler alert, but there's a lot of good stories in it. Definitely worth reading. But it's so simple. It's so simple. That's why I like 5 seconds. Like for example, you want to have a conversation with, I don't know, some CEO or something that's happens to be at the convention or something. If you just say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you shut off all the other thoughts. Like what if I say something stupid? What if this happens? What if that happens? No, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go there and have that conversation. I really need to do this. Like for example, today I had to move some logs that I have been procrastinating about like for so long. But yeah, I would have said like I'm about to make up another excuse, because your brain, if you give your brain more than 5 seconds, it's gonna make up an excuse. Like in the morning, like when you wake up very early, if I stay in the bed for more than like, if I stay in the bed for like a minute, like, and I don't get up, I'm probably not going to get up. Like you have that percentage. Like if I get up within the first 5 seconds, it's a 99% that I'm going to get up. I'm going to go work.
Totally.
Whatever. But then like the longer that time, that the lower that percentage, and it kind of drops pretty quickly after those 5. But it's it's an interesting topic, but crazy, like it's crazy how you can discipline yourself. But also we were kind of bringing up this topic because sharing thoughts, like even if they're not necessarily too extreme, like if you have some ideas that are not polished, I think this is a great platform to discuss those ideas. And even if they're not polished, it's a way for us to change our opinion in the end. If I watch this, or if I think about this later on, I'm going to say, you know what, you're right. I thought about it and I thought it was this way the whole time. Just like for example, you thought you read something and okay, it's like that. It's been like that for the last 10 years because I read it like that. But it ended up not being like that, or it's not like that anymore. And you tell me, and then you show me the fact, and I'm like, you know what, I had that wrong. That's kind of another thing that I wanted to bring up. But yeah, that's why I like having this platform for that.
I think the reason podcasts are blowing up and everybody loves podcasts is the fact that they get to see. I think a lot of people are afraid to say the thoughts that are in their heads. And I almost said their thoughts, but it's not their thoughts. These are a collection of ideas that have been given to them either by other people or they've collected themselves, through books or TV or computer or reading, whatever it is. And so they have this collection of thoughts and ideas, and some of them are connected and some of them aren't. And to watch people work through their thoughts in real time with other people, I think is encouraging, because it allows other people, people see that and they're like, oh, I can do that. Like, I wish I had some friends in my life to where I could talk about these ideas and really work through them with other people, because you don't ever do it with yourself. As much as you could, much as I could sit down here and have a conversation and try to play devil's advocate with myself and challenge my thoughts, and then, but I'm not bringing any new perspective. I'm not bringing any new experience. And so having those other people to kind of add further thoughts and build upon my thoughts and shoot holes in what I'm thinking. And then at the end of the day, still love me, still appreciate me, still want to hang out with me. I think that shows people that, hey, you don't have to be afraid to be real with what's inside your brain, what's in between your ears. Like, we're all trying. None of us have their answer. None of us do. At the end of the like, whenever we die, we'll finally figure out whatever the truth is. Until then, it's a matter of belief and faith, and that's just the reality of it all. But even saying that was something I couldn't say for first 26 years of my life. There's a certain fear of that reality, of owning that reality in many different ways. But the point of all of that is just, podcast allows us to do that. And we've had conversations, Darko and I, with people, and we've had the chance to get to hear people and what they think. And as we continue to get better at speaking with people and interviewing people and getting their thoughts as well, it's also helping us refine our own thoughts. But I want to rewind because we talked about ways to cut ideas, but the second thing that you said that I wanted to talk to you about was when your mind works against you. Why do you think that is? What do you think the benefit is of, because everybody does it, everybody's mind works against them. It tells you that you can't do it, or it says something, you're going to fail, I want you to fail. Why would your brain do that? What are your thoughts?
I mean, honestly, it's just I think that we are programmed that way, where that how do you call that? There is a way. There is a how do you call that?
Sabotage.
No. It's not. Brain is not necessarily sabotaging you. Brain is just trying to get you to survive, and it's doing that by just using the minimum. How do you call that? So this is how I think about it. Right now, like, we don't need to do things that prehistoric, that the first man had to do in order to survive. Like things like shelter, he had to hunt, he had to do all these things. We are comfortable, and I feel like your brain will not push you, unless you are in a bad situation. We are comfy, how do you call that? It's going against, it's going through minimal resistance. It's taking the path of minimal resistance. That's where I'm going. So, for example, least resistance. Yeah. So if you have a decision to make in the morning, you're gonna wake up 5, like, and you woke up past 7 or 8 on a regular basis, but all of a sudden you decide to wake up at 5, your brain is going to wake up in the morning and they're going to be like, it's going to be like, wait, we don't do this stuff. I wake up at 8, don't wake me up right now. It's I feel like there is something to that. What are your thoughts?
I don't know, but I do know. I mean, I know that my mind, and I want to show you something, and then after that, I want to talk to you a little bit about shower thoughts, which is kind of a weird phrase, but it was something that I think you saw me go through it actually. So I think it'll be kind of fun to talk about retrospectively. But I wanted to show you a video real quick from another podcast that I really like by a guy named Evan Carmichael. I don't know if you know who he is, but he has a podcast with Will Smith. And Will Smith talks about when your brain is working against you, what's the solution? Let's listen real quick. And
let's see.
I don't think this will be taken.
Want confidence, the link to join is in the description below. I was excited about taking a shot. The fact that it was so strange, you know, as an artist, it was fun to get out on that limb and hoping it doesn't break under your feet. I look at the world through a lens of comedy. My natural reaction is always, no matter when something happens and I can't even help it, it's why is that funny? I've never seen myself as particularly talented. Where I excel is I'm willing to die in the process of acquiring skill.
All right, hold on real quick. None of that applied to anything we're talking about. I was hoping we could. Is this Jocko?
Oh, there he is.
How do you step into bravery?
There you go.
The student wakes up at 4:30.
Step. That's how you step into bravery. Step. Take the step. Step aggressively towards your fear.
Yeah, we'll have to
we can revisit
that. Out. But we don't have to edit it out. But I guess it's an interesting idea. Why the mind works against you, and it's, you know, Jocko is one of those podcasts where he's nothing but motivation.
Yeah.
And I guess at the end of the day, it kind of comes back from. I guess it's also self-preservation. Now that I think about it. It's a way of, you know, finding an excuse to keep you from doing something that you perceive as dangerous or hard. And if you were to fail, you could be embarrassed or killed, depending upon whatever you're doing. So your mind thinks of ways to work against you, and that's possibly an explanation behind it.
Yeah, no, that's I don't think that the brain works against you, 100% of the time. Definitely not. Like I feel like your brain, like if you create good habits, like your brain is going to help you, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you
hopefully, yeah.
And I feel like after you wake up at like very early, after a while you start, and I'm not saying necessarily that waking up early is a good thing, right? Like, it works differently for everyone. I think, possibly, it might not be a good thing to wake up early. That you should wake up early. I don't know, right? Like it could be that it's definitely an interesting it's an interesting topic to think about. But my point was with brain, like I don't think that your brain necessarily works against you, but when you're making like small decisions throughout the day like that, like for example, how am I going to push myself, at work? I remember when I was playing basketball, I could play 10 hours a day as long as I would, I would push myself. I would say like I'm doing this because of that. And not even like having an end goal, that never really like pushed me, but just, saying, okay, I'm working towards this right now. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this for the next 2 hours, and just being repetitive. I feel like if I followed, just the path of least resistance, I would have never been where I am right now. Like I would have probably been still in Montenegro or something, not that like that would be bad or anything, it's an amazing country, a beautiful country, but my path was to play basketball on a higher level, and I don't think that I would have accomplished that, especially knowing how untalented I was starting. Literally had 2 left legs. It takes work, just like everything, and it's not something that I need to over-explain. I think that you know that pretty well.
Totally, yeah. I mean, A lot of it, a lot of it's discipline, and it sounds like, I think that kind of goes back to the conversation we were having earlier. The differences between the personalities is that is if you're some people like to explore ideas, and they're more of a thoughtful person. And it's funny, man. It's funny. The older I get, I see these personalities, and I can call them out immediately. There are specific people that come to my mind who are thinkers, ponderers, questioners, wanderers. They like to dwell in their head. And then there's other people who want to be in the present, in the now, and live here and take action and enjoy it. And they don't necessarily find enjoyment or pleasure out of the quandary that comes with philosophy or thinking about different religions and stuff like that. And my wife is one of those people. She is very much action oriented, task oriented. She doesn't necessarily kind of dive into those esoteric thinking patterns like I find myself in sometimes. So I think there is something about some people have a different nature. Is really what it is. Some people are cut from a different cloth, built with a different mold, whatever you want to say.
I guess, how do you define different nature?
That's it. I mean, it's a good point, because I know people. Some of it is personality. Some of it's personality, where they like to be spiritual and think deep thoughts. And I don't want to say spiritual like in the sense where those other people who are action oriented and task oriented can't be spiritual. They can be just as spiritual. These people like to think about the thoughts they have, and they are either doing it productively or as a way to keep from being active and doing things that are productive. Who knows, right? So I think a little bit of it's personal or personality. And then I think another piece of it could be like a spectrum of personal growth. I think some people want to explore those conversations. And I speak personally, right? When I was 23 and 22, I wanted to have those conversations. I longed to have those conversations because I didn't have anybody to have those conversations with. I wanted to be honest and real. And I wanted to talk with my friends about where I stood philosophically and religiously, and work through these ideas, because I couldn't do it by myself. I didn't have all the information at hand, and I wanted to ask questions and have those questions answered, or have questions come from those questions. Some people don't want that. Some people are like, hey, I got other things to do. All right, I got a list of to-dos, and on there is not thinking about things that I'll never know the answers to. And I think that goes back to personality. Again, what I was trying to say, I'm kind of talking in circles here.
No, keep on going.
The whole personal growth thing, I think, is another piece, which I just touched on, where it's like, it takes a little bit of growth for some people to actually dip their toes into that world, because some people are afraid once they start diving into that space and start thinking about things, that the ground that they stand on could be shaky, it could fracture, it could crack, and then they could fall through it because the foundation that they live their life on wasn't as concrete as they once thought. Some people can handle it. Some people enjoy the free fall that comes with that. Other people don't even want to experience it. They don't even want to see what it feels like, because they're afraid of what that could mean and what the consequences of that are. I really think that's kind of the two sides of the same coin. One's personality, where other people are task oriented and other people are thought oriented. People, one's the person that comes up with the idea, the other person's the person that acts on the idea and gets it done. And then the other one is somebody who's in the middle of the ground and wants to think that, but just hasn't had the freedom, or hasn't given themselves the freedom, or hasn't been brave enough to really go down that road, because it exposes you. It exposes you in a way that's uncomfortable. And a lot of people don't like to be uncomfortable. And you have to be a little masochistic to go down that road, I guess, now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. Do you see those personalities? Are you able to kind of see like for me, I'm really good at pegging people, man. And I've gotten a lot better at it. I'm like, if I talk to somebody for a while, I'm like, I know exactly the kind of person you are. All right.
Yeah.
I have 15 other people who are just like you. You guys all have the same motivations. You have all the same intentions and thoughts. Not all the same, right? I don't want to make a blanket statement, but they're real similar. And then I talk to somebody else. I'm like, oh, okay. I have 7 or 8 other people that are like that. And you guys are all motivated by this, and your thoughts all tend to be about this. You know, it kind of goes back to personality, and if you're able to really, you know, we were talking about this book earlier today, 48 Laws of Power, but one of the chapters in here was when asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest. You know, don't appeal to their mercy or gratitude. I think when you're able to figure out people's personalities and you're able to figure out their motivations, you're able to speak to them in a way, hopefully you're clever enough to come up with different ways of communicating so that you can talk to those people and get your thoughts and have them buy into your thoughts, because you've positioned that thought as in a way to where it appeals to their self-interest. What are your thoughts?
No, it's it's interesting, and of course, we as humans, I think that we tend to generalize a lot,
100%.
and we tend to put different people in different categories, and in a way that it makes sense to us. Of course, it's something that we all do, and I think that to your point, like you have your own way of and that's I have different thoughts on how I perceive like how I guess you can say group people. I know, for example, like here's a question for you. So what would you think about people who are like, if that's a spectrum, or if it has to be other one or the other, and then there's a person in the middle that's kind of in between. You mentioned that there's a personal growth which comes from people questioning themselves and going from kind of task oriented into that more I guess philosophical, like you said. What if you come from philosophical? Can you come from philosophical to task oriented?
That's a great question. I think it's hard for both people to flip the sides of the spectrum that they're on. I think it's doable. I think there's a John Mayer song that I love so much, and it kind of goes into this a little bit. Sorry about the little silence there. I'm trying to remember the lyric, but what he basically says is when he stops searching and stopped trying to find an answer to those questions that he had in his head, because everybody can agree John Mayer is probably one of the best lyricists and songwriters out there, as well as musicians, and his songs there's a reason he's so popular, because a lot of his songs really connect with a lot of people, and obviously a lot of his songs are probably written by other people as well. I don't see the actual song I'm looking for, but it says, once I stopped asking those questions and looking, everything seemed to be way better. And I think that's the flip for the philosophical person to get to become a task-oriented type person. And I also feel like you have to have that. You have to get so far in your philosophical nature, your philosophizing, your thoughts and considerations and ponderings, to where you have to say, either A, you have to accept the reality. You're never going to know the answer. It's fun to think about those things, but you're never going to have an answer. So if you're never going to have an answer, are you wasting your time perhaps by thinking about all the hundreds of different thoughts and ideas? And if you do think you are, then now you can start to say to yourself, well, let's start doing something that's more productive. But I think you're going to have a far greater chance of flipping that switch if you are able to have somebody in your life who does kind of come from a task-oriented mindset, right? And an example of that is my wife and I. We're both completely different in the way we think. She's task-oriented. I consider myself a thinker. I like to think about things and analyze things. And I think I started analyzing things when I began my first job as a market research analyst, and I had to analyze data, and my mind got into the habit of analyzing things from a whole bunch of different perspectives. And then that carried itself from data into literature and into religion and philosophy and my own personal thoughts. And then I started analyzing everything I do, and people do it naturally. People say they overanalyze. I'm an overthinker. I think too much, and that's not a bad thing as long as you can. As long as the way you're thinking is constructive. If your thinking isn't constructive and it's really destructive, it's slowing you down or hindering you from growing, then you have to find a new thinking model to allow you, or a new formula to help you think in a way that's more productive. Which kind of goes back to the book that you were talking about, where they talk about creating positive thought loops, the mind hacking movement book that you said, right? One of the chapters in that book was creating positive thought loops. And if you can use your thinking to help create a positive effect, I think you'll be better off. What are your thoughts, Darko? Do you agree?
So to me, what I'm trying to do right now, I'm just trying to dig into your separation between I want to see, how you separate between, because it seems like we have a hard description of these two different personalities. And being a student of philosophy myself, I used to put people into, are you a sophist or are you Aristotelian? And I would put people in those two different categories. Then I read this one.
Those?
It's a little bit complicated, and I in interest of time, I want to get into my point.
Okay.
And then a third category came up, which was what's the name?
The people in the middle?
No. There's a third category, but then I read more books and I learned more, and I was like, wait a second, you know what? And this was like in high school, like when I was learning about this stuff, and I was learning, everything from like Heracles, which was, he was a Greek philosopher, which was a super negative philosopher. Then, and then you get into people like Nietzsche. Like if you want to challenge your religion, and if you want to see if you're truly a believer,
he killed God.
You should probably challenge yourself by reading some of those things, what that guy said, and which I disagree with most is philosophies, because I do feel I once I went through it, I do feel stronger, my religion does feel stronger, and I think that you should challenge yourself, and that's another point that I could dive into, just like I could dive into Aristotelian and the sophist process. It's just crazy, like how deep those people went. Like what different structures you have, when it comes to those two schools. But then, I saw, I tried to think the same thing, and I was thinking, I read another book that was actually a negotiations book, and he said, like, you put people in these three different categories. You have people that are analytical, you have people that are assertive, and you have people that are agreeable. So how about those three categories? It's very interesting, and that's why, like, I've just learned your classification, and I want to hear more about it. I want to learn. I want to see, what do you think? How do you define these two different type of people? How do you, how certain are you? When you see a person, like what kind of what kinds of actions and things like put you in one category versus the other. Because I
For
see
me,
you as a task-oriented guy as well, honestly, because you get shit done too, honestly. Like when I thought about like how you went and like your house wouldn't look as spotless, you know, as it is, and as nice as it is without you doing a ton of things and like putting stuff on your list and completing those tasks, you know. And I just, you know, I'm trying to see how do those two things, you know, go together, as, you know, like, can you like be both of those things, or can you specifically be one thing? And I don't know how you can do the spectrum, but you know what, it's I'm just talking and talking, and I want to give it back to you and kind of hear your thoughts on that.
I think everything is, you know, is fractal. No, I'm kidding. Everything is a spectrum. You know, and I think personality, introversion, extroversion, choleric, melancholy, sanguine, you know, what's the other one? Sanguine, melancholy, choleric, and phlegmatic. Like all the different personalities, right? I don't think you're just one of them. And maybe there's somebody who's like 90% one of them, but I think everybody has a little bit of everything in them. I just think it comes down to comfort level as well. Some people just like to talk about not dumb things, because it's not dumb. Some people like to talk about religion, and like to really debate, you know, and maybe that's probably kind of what goes back to what you're saying. Maybe people are more assertive with their thoughts, while other people are more agreeable. They just want everybody to be happy and want everything to kind of go well and everything to go nicely. While other people are more like, hey, I have an idea. I want to assert my idea, and I want to hear what your thoughts are, and you assert your idea back. And it's this almost combative exchange of ideas.
But are we doing that right now? Are we being analytical right now? Like, are we going through each other's thoughts, and are we both being that analytical person and not necessarily task-oriented person? That's what I want to get at.
For sure. I think it really comes down to just the religious piece of it. Some people are comfortable speaking about their religious. Dude, religion is a sensitive topic, man, because a lot of religions is Islam. If you even think about leaving Islam, it's apostasy and they'll kill you. Right?
Not necessarily. So I knew people who were Islamic. A lot of people in Bosnia are Islamic, and they are not going to. So I know people who converted from Islam to Christianity. It's really different in countries. You know, if you're in one country, like you're gonna, you know, you're going to experience different things. Of course, you know. I've seen people who are Muslims who ate bacon every morning and, you know, drank beer and stuff, like, you know, it's not as extreme as, you know, people necessarily like to put it. And that's a good point. To challenge the spectrum too, because I feel like there is a lot of similarities between things that extremists do on both sides, and that's why I like to put that in a circle. So I like to put a spectrum in a circle, where, for example, left and right, you know, what's left and what's right. Let's say, what's the most extreme left and what's the most extreme right? Like, historically, who is the most extreme right and who is the most extreme left?
Exactly.
Just tell me.
As far as people?
Yeah, like, you pick a person. Like, I think that the most extreme right was probably Hitler, right?
I don't know the honest answer to that question, but I definitely think. I mean, if we're talking right and left in the political sense, I don't know. Probably Gandhi would be on the left.
What about Stalin? He was way more. He was a left. He was a communist, so he was like a far left, like socialist.
Yeah, there's I don't know if Gandhi was a socialist or communist, but in my mind, there's like a spectrum within the spectrum, right? like, are you a militant left or a passive left, or are you militant right or a passive right? And by right, do we mean somebody who is, oh, by the way, the map I'm showing are the countries of the Islam countries that actually kill you for leaving. So to your point, and I misspoke, obviously not all Islam, not all Muslims are going to kill you. But there's some of them out there. But the point I was making is that because religion is so intense, a lot of people don't want to talk about it. But back to your question, I don't know, man. What are your thoughts? You're right and left. I mean,
so what if it was a circle, and like at the top, like the extremes were at the top. So like you have, right coming from the right side and left coming from the left side, and then at the bottom you have normal people that are more centralized, and at the top you have the far left and far right. And at the top is where all of the extremists all the extreme stuff is happening, like concentration camps and all that crazy stuff. But at the bottom is where normal people are who are just trying to, I don't know. It's an interesting topic. Listen, I don't talk about this stuff that much. But do you think that we can also put it on a religion? I'm open to talk about those ideas, definitely. And
sure.
Yeah,
that's an interesting idea. I never really considered it a circle, but it is kind of like this almost, right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Like, yeah, I mean, it's like, let's say at the top you have the two, but close to 12 o'clock is where you have the two sides just going against each other, punching each other.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, like, if you go, like, if you say, like, if you're Islam, for example, and let's say you put Islam in the same, this is just, we're having a conversation, but let's say you put Islam and you put Christianity, in the same thing. You have both, Christian extremists, and you have Islamic extremists too. Of course, Christianity as a religion is much milder, but you have people that are taking advantage of it. You have people that were doing genocides, by killing off a ton of Muslims, and I don't want to get into that stuff. That's part that I don't like to talk about, about religion. That's why I don't like to bring this topic up. But it's just what, I don't honestly like getting into those those things. I don't know where am I going.
That goes back to, that kind of proves my point. Like, there's some people who don't mind diving into those scary topics, and then there's some people who are like,
but you learn the dark side of people there. Like, there is a dark side of people that I feel like I shouldn't be discussing, because there are people that went through that personally, that I personally know, that went through that stuff, and they felt it on their skin. And for me to discuss about that and talk about that, it just feels, I feel like I'm being disrespectful to some of those people. So that's why I like to choose not to dive into that stuff.
Yeah.
Because
you feel like you're like, hey, why talk about this when life is good? We got food, we got family.
Exactly.
This is dark. And I'm the opposite. I'm like, let's talk about people wanting to kill other people and take over the world, and why do they want to do that? What's really going on? Are we being lied to? And I don't know why I'm that way, but I find that stuff to be way more fascinating than,
of course,
than who won the championship.
Well, you know what? Then you will love this one podcast. And listen, I'm open to talks about that. It's just like talking about religion and like kind of going into that too. Like, I want to talk about it. I feel like there is one guy from Montenegro. He's a psychologist, and he's very well known, and he's talking about like how humans are another division. We are chimpanzees and bonobos.
Okay.
Chimpanzees are right, and bonobos those are two types of monkeys, and bonobos are left. And he's talking about traits of each monkey. Of
definitely
each.
bonobo.
it's crazy, right? You know, it's crazy. You can make those type of, but like bonobos they have traits like of left. They honestly like they're open in their you know, much more open in their sexuality, much more, you know, like it's much. And but then you see chimpanzees, they're way more radical. They would like kill each other and do all these things. You know, it's crazy. But this guy divided, you know, yeah, you see that? It's crazy, right?
Yeah. So you have bonobos who are empathizing, who
Yep.
this goes back to kind of what I was talking about, like systemizing people who are task oriented, who want to use tools and want to do things and act. And then you have people who are empathizing, who want to feel close to other people and feel like they can relate with one another and find some way of kinship through emotional stances rather than with actional stances. But yeah, bonobos and chimpanzees, man. Interesting.
Yeah.
I kind of like the look of a bonobo. He's cute. Look at that guy.
Yes.
He looks like
Definitely.
that chimp looks like he could just rip a tree in half.
Yeah. No, but I feel like you also get things done as well. And,
Yeah.
you do it effectively too. So I feel like you do you are not the person that's, you know, just defined by being, you know, you also get things, and I feel like you are also assertive. Like you I don't think that, you know, and this is just, you know, you tell me if I'm wrong. I'm not, you know, I'm not saying that you're working in sales, and for you to be successful you probably do need to be, you know, assertive. Like you have all these tactics on LinkedIn that I see that, you know, you're putting a lot of work into and all this stuff, but I feel like you're using both. Like you're also empathizing with people because, you know, you put them on the same level, you are, you know, inviting them in a conversation, but you're also, you know, but you're also getting things done, you know, and not in a way that's just you're looking your own interest, but you're also looking for interest of those other people. I don't know. Tell me if that's a correct way of looking at it. I mean, be honest, because it might. I'm just working my way through, you know, working through this differentiation that you have.
One of the things I realized early on when I first moved here was I lacked certain skills, right, that other people had. And those skills, a lot of people assume come naturally. So I'm talking about like introversion and extroversion, right? There are people who are naturally talkative, but then there's people too who grow up in a family that are engaging and conversational and confrontational and provoke you to have to interact and engage with them, which requires you to improve your communication skills. It requires you to improve your thinking skills. So, you know, being in a job, and I'm looking over at my buddy Jeff Kuhn, and I'm like, this guy's amazing at talking. He can say whatever he wants to say, however he wants to say it, and if it doesn't come out right, he doesn't care. He shows no shame. He's just like trying to get his thoughts out. And I'm like, God, I wish I had the liberty, the freedom, the autonomy, and the self-will to actually act like this. So immediately I realized, all right, I need to start improving myself in those ways. And I used to blame it on the fact that I was like, oh, I'm introverted. I'll never be that way. But I think that's an excuse.
There you go.
It's an excuse that introverts use, and it's.
You think that's now? Just, sorry to interrupt you, but add this to your you know, what you were going to say. So do you think that excuse was built by your brain? Like, do you think that brain was working against you there? So that's another thing that you can add to that. They kind of connect to what we were talking at the beginning. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, I wish it was built by my brain, but there's people out there who are touting this as if it's some, you know, dogma, some doctrine that you can believe in. Introverts are introverts and extroverts are, and it's like, no. It's all it is social skills and then ego. If you don't have social skills, you need to practice them. You need to put yourself into situations where you can practice them. But before you can do that, you have to surrender your ego. Why? Because to put yourself in situations where you talk to other people and you look like a silly goose and you embarrass yourself, your ego doesn't like that. Your ego's like, ooh, oh, I don't like that. I'm not good at something. This hurts. I don't want to look bad. So you have to surrender your ego and say, hey, I don't care if I look like a complete jackass. I don't care if I look silly. I don't care what people think. I've got to get better at getting my thoughts out. I've got to get better at refining my thinking. And the only way that's going to work is if I practice. Practice makes perfect. And when you're in college and you're reading and writing, you almost sometimes, and then you start your first job and you're doing all of this introverted actions and you never really practice your social skills, and then you get into the workforce and then you think, this is just who I am. I'll never be anything else. It's another lie. It's another excuse. You practice, you get out there, you evolve, you grow. And when you surrender the ego and you start putting yourself in those situations, you start to realize one of the things that you start to realize is like, oh, and there's a truth to this, right? The moment you're able to stop caring what other people think about you is the first step towards freedom. Because it's really our thoughts of other people's thoughts that keep us from acting. What is John going to think if I try this and fail? What is my mom and dad going to think if I try this and fail? Forget them. Forget you don't know what their thoughts are, and quite honestly, it's none of your business. All right? You do what you want to do, and if you fail, get up and try it again. You just got to keep practicing it, and you're going to look silly because you're not good at it yet, right? And that was something I kept telling myself, and it took a lot of practice. That's why I did comedy stand-up for a little bit. I was like,
wow,
hey,
I didn't know that about you.
I have.
Do you have any videos or things?
Hold on real quick. Let me see.
Dude, yeah, we're putting the links in the description for those.
This one is definitely probably not going anywhere. I have it saved somewhere, but I'll find it. Let's see. But yeah, I started doing stand-up, and the reason I started doing stand-up, I was like, all right, well, if I want to get better at talking, if I want to improve at something, then I need to, to practice. And the only way I'm going to practice is if I put myself out there and I look like a silly goose from time to time. And, and over time, guess what? Once I started doing it, once I started to not be afraid of what people thought of me, I got my thoughts heard. And once I got my thoughts heard, I started getting positions of authority. People started looking at me for ideas. People started coming to me for certain things. And
dude, that's crazy. I had no idea. This is awesome. I had no idea, man. That's awesome, dude. I'm gonna watch that. I'm gonna watch that tonight. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So you gotta be okay with looking silly, man. And I think that's everybody's. I really think it's everybody's block. It's what am I trying to say? That's what's keeping people from going to the next level, is they're afraid to look bad at something, right? You've studied all this time in your life, and that's why a lot of people don't like to talk about certain subjects, is because they haven't done enough research. They don't want to talk and have their ideas come out silly, and it all comes back to ego, man. You people gotta start being okay with looking like amateurs every once in a while, like looking like a silly Billy. Because once you're able to do that, you hang in there, you work through those ideas, you work through those thoughts, and you improve, you get better. And then, and if the best thing is not caring about what anybody thinks, it's not like you can stop it completely, but it's definitely a freedom, man.
One thing that I want to bring up about that now, for me, like personally, a lot of times it's ego that wants to say things. Like I find myself, I tend to bring up ideas during the meetings, especially during big meetings a lot, even though they're not the best ideas. I'm typically the guy that, after I said I should have I said that. And I'm seeing myself suppressing myself, even though I'm consider myself to be an introvert a lot of the times. But, I see myself. I'm just saying this because I think that I know this, and I'm just saying this because and I just jump into it, and sometimes it ends up it being pretty good, but a lot of the times it's not as polished that, like you said, like that like it was, especially when the idea. But I feel like you can work on that, like you said. But I just want to go back just one more time to your kind of the division that you had between and I'm not trying to say it's a division, but you had two groups of people. I guess so. You do believe that it's a spectrum, right?
Yeah. I right now the two groups that I put it in are people who don't like to be by themselves and think deep thoughts, and other people who like to talk about light-hearted things, and they'd rather do something than sit and think. And then there's a spectrum where there's some people who don't mind crossing over every once in a while, and then these people don't mind crossing over. And I'll tell you this, dude, I've gotten more done in the last 2.5 years because I've married my wife. Yeah. Naturally, I like to sit, think, and read and ponder, and she doesn't. And so she's helped me really act on a lot of things. And I have a friend who is in my situation, and that friend is with somebody who's like Danny, but my friend is like me. But my friend doesn't have the humility to really accept the fact that the person that they're with is helping them. This person is filling in a gap that you don't have. Danny fills in my gap. Danny, like, here's me, here's Danny, boom, right? There's a lot of things I like that Danny doesn't like, a lot of things that she likes that I don't like. And then when we came together, we started to appreciate each other's differences, and it actually helped us, right? If I was starting a company that helped people build websites, would I think about it this way, man? Every great company has a Wozniak and a Jobs.
Does it really?
No, but the best ones do. The best ones do.
What
The best
about Bill
relationships.
Gates?
Bill Gates probably has his person too, doesn't he?
I don't know. I thought he was the geek from the start. Like Zuckerberg was a geek from the start, right?
Yeah. Maybe he's an exception, but I think Apple's a good point, because you have the guy who's good at marketing and talking, and you have the guy who's good at doing the work. But that goes back to the relationship piece, where you have two people with two different strengths coming together to help grow something. And that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, no, I think that there's a lot of different examples out there. I think that, and probably if you go to different countries, what if you come to the country where, like United States, people don't follow, aggressors necessarily, like people who are, strong, like, let's say strong men. Like, for example, countries that are, for example, in Europe, you see a lot of, like Russia follows Putin. Putin probably has to play that role of Putin. What about him? Do you think that, he, in order to get to where he is, he's probably one of the richest people in the world. Like, we don't know how many billions that guy has. He probably has. He might be a trillionaire. We don't know. But, I feel like there is a lot of variety there.
There's a lot of
be able to put Putin, in any one of those categories, for example. Or let's say, would you put, Trump, for example, in any of those categories? Would you put, is Obama necessarily? I mean, I'm just trying. Now I'm going, like, I'm not trying to, of course you can put everyone in that category because there's a spectrum, there's a possibility, but, to me it's just digging into that. And you know what? I think that I did get, my answer, but I didn't get very deep. But do you have anything else to add?
Final thoughts.
Yeah, final thoughts.
Two final thoughts. Trump and Putin are more task-oriented chimpanzees.
Yeah.
Obama's a bonobos. He's more of a philosophical pothead who likes to think thoughts. That's how I would bucket those three people. And then the shower thoughts that I had brought up a second ago that I never got to talk about, which we were talking about disciplining your mind and creating positive mental loops. That for me was what helped me. I don't know if you remember this or not, but when I transferred from doing market research to sales, and also got married, and also was bringing, my wife to the U.S. and moving all this stuff, right? It was a heavy season of my life, and you probably could see it in my eyes, my inability to kind of like connect with people's eyes, because I was unsure of myself, man. I didn't know how it was going to work out. I said either God, you're going to help me get through this because this is what I want and I'm going to try for it. Or if it fails, I'm going to flee to South America and live off the land. Like it was basically all or nothing, right? And one of the things that helped me get through that season of my life was taking a sheet of positive affirmations, laminating them, and putting them in my shower. And then every morning when I went into my shower, I would read those positive affirmations to myself. I'm smart. I'm a good guy. I'm planning on building a family. I'm doing this. This is going to happen. Things that were present tense, also things that were future tense as well. And I did that, and I continue to do it to today, and it really helps. That's my final thought.
Awesome. No, I think that's a good way to, close this down. I think it's a very positive way to close this down because, I'm sure there's a lot of people who, struggle. And that's definitely that was a tough time in your life, but it defined you, it helped. You went through that, and now you can say, hey, I went through that. If I went through that, I can do a lot. I can make a lot of different things happen. But yeah, that's awesome. Well, it's getting late, and I feel like that was a good session. And
should we wrap it up, or are we done?
Yeah, I think that we can wrap it up. What do you think?
Let's do it. Well, thanks everybody for joining. This has been podcast number 400. I'm just kidding. Number 7 of the Quarantiners with Darko and Ben. Hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe somewhere.
Yep.
We'll talk to you guys later.
And like and comment and
all that stuff.
Yep, all the stuff. All right, guys.